Hi, welcome to this Cloud Foundry Summit session, SUSE and Cloud Foundry, helping customers simplify, modernize, and accelerate. I'm Troy Topnik. I'm a product manager at SUSE, and I'm responsible for a product called SUSE Cloud Application Platform. It's our distribution of Cloud Foundry. It's our application platform with services and some excellent features that I'll talk to you a little bit about later. I've been working with Cloud Foundry since it first came out in 2011. So I'll talk a little bit about where I've seen it come from and where I see it going. Three things we talk a lot about at SUSE, it's become a bit of a mantra, is simplify, modernize, accelerate. I'm going to divide up this little talk into these sections and discuss, first of all, essential complexity versus accidental complexity and how we can minimize these and how we can simplify both the complexity in our processes and in our software. We're going to talk about how we exhort our customers to modernize, but we ourselves also have to modernize. Moving Cloud Foundry onto Kubernetes has forced us to rethink Cloud Foundry, and customers often go through the same transformations when they adopt cloud-native technologies. And of course, we're going to talk about how to accelerate, how to get software delivery going faster. Cloud Foundry itself moves extremely fast, and we can help take the knowledge we've gained in developing Cloud Foundry and allow our customers to do the same, to also accelerate. So let's take an example here. This is one view, a fairly simplified view of Cloud Foundry application runtime, showing CAPI, showing the connections of the cloud controller to the adjacent parts of the system. All of these roles are fairly well understood by the developers of Cloud Foundry, fairly well understood actually by most operators of Cloud Foundry platforms. And we can describe how most of these things work. This is a manageable level of complexity, but it is not the whole story because we can go a level deeper. And when we go a level deeper, especially with the scheduler Diego, we see a tremendous amount of complexity because it's doing a very difficult job. It's doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but maybe the accidental complexity is starting to creep in at this level. Maybe it's doing things more than it has to do. Now, I mean, the obvious thing to ask at this point is, do we have to, as Cloud Foundry, or as Cloud Foundry vendors, or as Cloud Foundry developers, have to be responsible for this complexity? We're going to come back to that idea. One of the things that we've seen with the proliferation of projects within CNCF, this is the CNCF landscape diagram that shows all the projects and products and companies that make up that ecosystem. There is a tremendous amount of stuff out there. And we probably don't want to include this many projects or this kind of profusion of different competing technologies within Cloud Foundry. But we can take from it. We can actually choose things from this ecosystem that are best suited to tasks that need to be solved in Cloud Foundry so that we can share the complexity with other people. We can inherit the complexity, but the responsibility is going to be shared not only with a larger community, but with sometimes specialists in the particular area where we're adopting the technology. Prometheus developers would be very good at time series databases. Kubernetes obviously is all about scheduling containers, etc. So enterprise customers face this same problem when they're confronted with this landscape diagram and all of these new technologies from CNCF. Cloud Foundry can be a curated subset of these services and features and projects so that we can provide a good developer experience. So let's talk about modernizing. Modernizing the enterprises that we deal with, that we consult with, that we're making products for, but also let's talk about the history of modernizing Cloud Foundry. It's what's happened to it recently to make it a more modern, a more cloud-native platform itself. So SUSE wanted to modernize. Cloud Foundry. SUSE wanted to produce a Cloud Foundry distribution built on the expertise of a team that I was part of that were really good at turning Cloud Foundry itself into containers. And we wanted to take upstream Cloud Foundry right from CF deployment and create Cloud Foundry application runtime on Kubernetes. So when we proposed this to the community, we proposed the idea of an operator. Now, it was originally intended to be simply a Kubernetes operator for Cloud Foundry application runtime, taking care of the lifecycle management of that. But undergoing this process of taking the BOSH releases from upstream, we quickly realized that we had to basically solve the problem of how to convert BOSH releases into Kubernetes artifacts at runtime. And so we did. We turned it into an operator for any and every BOSH release. And to do that, that was implementing BOSH director functionality within Kubernetes, which is awesome because then we have these useful CRDs, custom resource definitions in Kubernetes that can do BOSH-like things: Quarks secret, Quarks job, Quarks stateful set, and Quarks restart. That emulates behavior that you can get from BOSH director. KubeCF is CF deployment for Kubernetes. It uses CF deployment. It sources all of the code from CF deployment releases, and it actually uses all the manifests and ops files to make Cloud Foundry work on Kubernetes. Now, this release is a lighter weight release than we'd done before because we had the operator on hand to handle some of the management of deployment and so forth, and managing these templates. And we were able to reach a little deeper into the configuration and make arbitrary changes that you would in a BOSH-like release via Helm. But in the process of doing this, we were able to change SUSE Cloud Foundry, SCF, into something that was a lot closer to the upstream CF deployment. Now, one of the big pieces of reducing complexity, and something that we've been waiting to do for a long time, was to replace Diego with the Kubernetes scheduler itself. So Irene is a plugin for the Cloud Controller, or it's a mechanism by which Cloud Foundry can delegate the scheduling of applications, user applications in Cloud Foundry, to Kubernetes. This shifts a lot of the complexity of scheduling those applications to Kubernetes. And though Kubernetes has to solve that problem as well, at least that's being solved by someone else. Kubernetes is there already. It's actually running our platform. Now it can run the applications that are running on platform as well. It also opens the door for us to use a lot of features in Kubernetes or tools in the Kubernetes community that are really, really useful, that may allow us to do new things and add new functionality to Cloud Foundry easily, because the base functionality is there in the platform. Another project that SUSE has led is Stratos. Stratos is the web UI for Cloud Foundry. It has a backend proxy that allows you to connect multiple endpoints and multiple different kinds of APIs to this proxy and expose them in an easy to understand web interface. Now, this is solving complexity in a different way. This is using good UI design principles in order to expose Cloud Foundry features in a logical way, so that someone can just look at the interface and understand how to use Cloud Foundry and understand the benefit of deploying applications to a platform as a service. How are we going to simplify in order to accelerate? Now that we've worked so very hard to get Cloud Foundry where it is, get it working on Kubernetes, get the integration of new next generation components, it'd be really great if we could catch that wave and use our momentum to gain even more speed. So we've demonstrated that we can do this. KubeCF, together with the Quarks Operator, can turn CF deployment releases into Helm charts and manage them on Kubernetes. That's been demonstrated. Kubernetes admins can understand this quite easily. They can deploy it quite easily to Kubernetes. But we do have something else we need to do. We have to do this next. We have to take different types of deployment artifacts and combine them into a release for Kubernetes, whether they come from a BOSH release, Helm chart, raw Kubernetes YAML with container images, or some other package format that we don't even know about yet. We need to take this next generation of Kubernetes native or Kubernetes idiomatic components and combine them, and we have a plan to do this. Let's talk about these next generation components. So more recently than 2017, it's become clear to everyone in the Cloud Foundry community that Kubernetes is the next platform for Cloud Foundry. It is a natural fit. And so all of the upstream teams now are on board with creating Kubernetes native Cloud Foundry components right from the get-go. And you'll find this, this repository in the Cloud Foundry org called CF for K8s. Now, this is the place where all of the next generation Cloud Foundry components come together for integration testing, and it is itself a release as well. You'll see it's using only the next gen components like Irene, which I mentioned earlier, Kpack for staging, Paketo build packs, which are cloud native build packs that are maintained by the Cloud Foundry team, and Istio, and many other things as well, using the latest technologies to preserve the Cloud Foundry experience, but leveraging all these great things from CNCF and elsewhere. It does not use BOSH releases. So the things that come together in CF for K8s do not come from BOSH releases, which means there are far fewer constraints and far less inherited complexity. So using these Kubernetes native components means you don't have to emulate the BOSH director. You don't have to do all this work to run BOSH releases on Kubernetes. You can just design it from the start to run on Kubernetes. And that was the forcing function that CF for K8s brought to Cloud Foundry. It made all of the developers of the maintainers of Cloud Foundry think about how they could use Kubernetes. Which brings us to the question, if we've got KubeCF, which is a way to bring BOSH releases to Kubernetes, and we've got CF for K8s that's integrating next generation components directly from the upstream teams to make a new Kubernetes release, what are we going to do? These are two separate projects? Well, they did start out that way, but there's a level of communication that I think you would only ever find in the Cloud Foundry community. These projects are converging, and there's a great deal of interaction between the teams. So just to explain the difference, in case anyone gets confused with this, KubeCF provides everything now. So it passes the acceptance tests. There are commercial releases that are based on it, and you can use it right now. It is analogous to, it draws from CF deployment releases that you're familiar with. CF for K8s is the proving ground for the next generation components. Now, over time, we hope that these projects will converge. We're going to make them converge. Because in KubeCF, we have ways to bring in Kubernetes native components directly. So one by one, as these upstream components become ready, we can replace the BOSH releases within KubeCF with Kubernetes native or Kubernetes idiomatic releases. So it may be that they never converge completely. We'll likely have different packaging, but within that packaging, we will have the same Cloud Foundry and the same Cloud Foundry experience for the end users. So I've put together some resources and links here. You can get the slides later. The repositories for all of the projects that I mentioned, or a few of the projects I mentioned. And of course, we welcome conversations with people who are interested on the Cloud Foundry Slack. And this is all by way of introducing the next generation of SUSE Cloud Application Platform, which is being launched at CF Summit. Again, we're designing this in order to simplify, modernize, and accelerate Cloud Foundry, but also to do the same for our customers. So thanks very much. Okay, sorry everyone. This was me talking to to nobody. Yeah, sorry, Richard. I misunderstood. I thought I'd been answering Andy Hunt's question for the last 2 minutes or so, but in fact, I had not been broadcasting. I confessed to getting confused by this interface early in the morning. Andy Hunt asks, is the plan for KubeCF to always stay based on BOSH releases and CF deployment, or will it eventually look more and more like CF for K8s? What does convergence for the two projects look like in the long run? I touched on this briefly in the talk. We will eventually move off of BOSH releases and be pulling in components from CF for K8s. So it will look more and more like CF for K8s. The Cloud Foundry experience should stay the same because that's what we're trying to preserve here. It might be that we always package it differently. We're fond of KubeCF being a Helm chart, and we would like to keep it that way. So we are going to be combining more and more of the new ingredients into the Helm chart that is KubeCF. Over time, we expect the reliance on CF Operator to be less, but there are still some very useful things for lifecycle management in Quarks that actually the CF for K8s project is using as well, which we will continue to use. I hope that answers the question. Sorry for the delay finding this this meeting and then getting it actually started. Any more questions, please pop them in the Q&A tab or feel free to ask them in the chat. I also take banter and gentle ribbing. I'm just glad that my head isn't cut off like it was for so much of the recording, which I didn't realize at the time. As a sponsor session, I should probably plug that we have SUSE Cloud Application Platform 2.1 out as of today. It's a great release based on KubeCF 2.5.8 with some great supporting services like the latest release of the mini broker, the latest release of Stratos, which is a fantastic thing to behold, with all of the Kubernetes functionality from the SUSE branch or the SUSE fork being contributed upstream so everyone can enjoy it. If there's no other questions, comments from the peanut gallery, I was seriously expecting Jeff Hobbs to give me more grief in this session, but as that's not the case, sorry to stagger in late here, but thanks very much for attending the session, and we hope you visit us at the SUSE booth as well. Bye for now.